Hi guys, it's Josh, your host from Recovery Talks 24/7, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you guys listening to another great episode that I'm coming up with a lovely gentleman called Russell. Before we start, we are sponsored by the company called Money Wellness, and they are a company that support and help you with all of your debt issues, or if you need to have a conversation about sort of money tips and tricks, then definitely get in contact with Money Wellness. Just to give you a brief sort of story about myself, I was in a substantial amount of debt. I managed to give them a call and I was absolutely petrified of speaking to them. But you know what? By the end of the phone call, it was absolutely amazing and they really, really did support me. And now I'm on a journey of a DRO and it's been a great experience. So if you do need to get any sort of advice, do give them a call. Don't be afraid. Just pick up the phone and give them a call. So yeah, without further ado, I've got the amazing Russell. How you doing?
I'm all right, thank you, Josh. The amazing Russell.
This gentleman has got an amazing story, of strength and hope of what he's been through in his life. Now, we've had many people that have come on my show previously that have had all different stories, of either being an addiction or have maybe suffered with their mental health. And it's been such an amazing time to be able to have a better understanding about these people's stories. But today I really want to have a chat with Russell and get to know him a bit more, even though I do know him, but obviously for the listeners out there as well, and just to go on this journey with him, see what's been going on for him. So Russell, if you don't mind, just introduce yourself.
Thanks,
What have you
mate.
been through? Why are we here today?
Okay, well, we're here today to help me work on my nerves and anxiety over doing this. So thank you for this opportunity. My name is Russell. I'm an addict. I've done a few of these main shares stuff with fellowships and that. And I always used to say something dramatic at the beginning, like, I'm pretty sure I was born an addict. But I don't do that anymore. I don't like that. I don't like pigeonholing myself from the moment I was born into a box. Even though a lot of the hallmarks were there. I was a little tea leaf. When I was 4 years old, I was framing my brother for crimes he didn't commit when he was 3. There was 3 years between us. So, even age 6, I was addicted to Panini stickers. I was addicted to Star Wars stickers. I became addicted to shoplifting when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. Sweets, Star Wars, computer games. I had my first console when I was maybe 1982, so I was 6 years old, and addicted to a game called Pitfall, which was just a block moving around the screen on top of other blocks. And I think both of my parents were and are addicts. My mum died of her disease 20 odd years ago now. My dad was a massive, massive drinker, still is. And addicts raising addicts, innit? Yeah. It's a bugger. I don't blame them. I've never, ever, not once blamed them. I've always been that guy. They were just doing their own thing. I think, truly though, if I was to look back, and a psychologist, or if I had any amount of therapy or something, they'd say, well, they've probably got some explaining to do. When I look back at the upbringing I actually received, it was a loving one. I mean, they loved us, my brother and I, and we always had good Christmases and good birthdays. But as far, maybe it's just my memory, but I don't remember there being much joy in between those two things. There was a lot of babysitters in the evenings, but both my parents, to their credit, were amazing darts players. My dad was world class, played all around the world, played for England. Eric Bristow was a regular visitor at our house. Cliff Lazarenko, John Lowe, all those classics from the 80s. So I know that they had that going on. They were traveling up and down the country, but it's a drinking culture, isn't it? So there was a lot of that. That was early doors, really. And my mum was a heavy smoker, my grandmother was as well, and I can distinctly remember coming downstairs, and the reason I'm going to tie into this is as follows. I walked down the stairs, and it was the kitchen was thick with smoke, and I was like, you guys are disgusting, cigarettes, you will never catch me smoking. Day 1 of secondary school, I was smoking cigarettes, and the only reason I started smoking cigarettes, and looking back on this now, I realise it is because I was frightened. I fell in hard with I was just ended up sitting next to the wrong kid in the wrong form group. And he offered me a cigarette after school, and I took it because I just didn't want to look less than. So even though he went complete, I hated cigarettes. I was a I wanted to be an elite level athlete when I was that age. And yeah, that was it. And then by the end of the first week at school, I was smoking hash, stealing alcohol, just doing all the things again, because these guys, this boy and his brother, they knew what I was, and they just latched onto me. Right, let's go around his house. His parents are never there. They've got alcohol. There's money. Money was going missing, and I knew it wasn't me, and I knew it wasn't my little brother, so it must have been them. And that was really the beginning of my substance use. Given all the other things that I was addicted to and all the other problems I had, this was when things started to change. And I listened to other people share, and they talk about, and it made me feel different, and it was perfect. And it was never like that for me. That was never my reason for using, was to change. Not in early days anyway. It was not to change who I was. It was just to be left alone, just so I wouldn't be called names or pointed at or hit. Or I don't know about you where fighting's concerned, but I'm not a fighter. I've never been a fighter. I've never thrown a punch in anger. I've hit my brother a couple of times play fighting, and I've been over exuberant, and I've probably pushed people. In fact, I know I've pushed a couple of times, but I just haven't got that about me. And so there was always that fear that I'm going to get whacked, or I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm going to offend somebody and they're going to hit me. And yeah, most of it was tied up in that. Certainly in my school days, I bunked off about 3 years. It was different in those days. You could get away with a bit of truancy. I don't think you can as much anymore. No. But I mean, this is 35 years ago, something like that. Yeah, I think the first 3 years of secondary school, because of the level of bullying that I was putting up with some proper. I mean, my bullies now, one of them's in prison for murder, the other was doing a 30 stretch for robbery. Two of them are dead. These were proper hard nuts even then, and they grew up to carry on being that. And so I would just avoid it by not going to school. But then what do you do when you're not at school? I couldn't go home, so it was rolling around with these lads and getting in trouble and stealing beer from outside pubs, whatever we could do. And my parents, whilst they'd separated by this point, my dad was despairing of it, but there wasn't much he could do because he was very busy with his stuff, and he'd just gotten remarried, and they were at the pub all the time because she was a darts player. And so, I was just kind of left to get on with it, and but it was made perfectly clear to me that I was a terrible disappointment. My brother, I'm the smart one, sort of, if you want to call it that. I was told that from a very early age. And again, knowing what I know now about subconscious beliefs and how we get programmed as children, I was told early on, you're so clever, you could have the world on a plate and you're throwing it away. Why can't you be more like your brother? He has to work hard for everything he's got. And at the time, it's just like, but now looking back, I realise how damaging that might have actually been to me. I told you I was going to get waylaid and go off all over the place. So where are we at?
No, so obviously at the beginning of the story then, what you was just sharing then, which is quite interesting because there's different people and people that may be listening at home as well. Everyone has a sort of, even though you had addict parents, for example, but you still was looked after well, you still had good Christmas, to other people it was like, oh, that's why you became an addict, is because of your parents. But how you've perceived it and how you've explained it, it's amazing, because I've met a lot of people that had that similar sort of story, but they haven't had anything bad to say about their parents. They were just lost obviously in their addiction as well, but they still provided for them, which is great how you've kind of explained that as well. Because there is this sort of stigma, isn't there, out there, that if you come from an addict family, it's like, oh, it's their fault why you're an addict. But sometimes it does come down to us as well that makes the choices, isn't it?
100%. We're going to talk about choice a lot later on. But like I know now, with the work that I've done and the things that I've tried to learn, that my parents were just doing the best they could with what they had. Any issues of mine are my issues. Even when I was a child, my life up to this point now, you and I having this conversation, I don't believe, I know, and I live that my life is a direct reflection of every single decision I've ever made leading up to this moment, good and bad. No matter what happened to me in the past, no matter what beatings I got from people at school, no matter what toys were taken away from me as a child, whatever, like this, it's all on me. And I've got no right to judge it one way or the other. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. I know you've heard me say this before. And since the dawn of the Big Bang, every single thing that's ever happened has led to this moment now. And I've got no right to judge it and say it isn't the way I want it to be or it is the way I want it to be. I'm just a passenger, 13.8 billion years, and I live for 70, 80 years. I shouldn't be saying things aren't the way that I want them to be. And it's another thing I used to open my shares with is I have little use for the past and I rarely think about it. And that is true because I rarely think it's not difficult for me to talk about my past, but there's such a level of detachment from it now because I only worry about the future. I'm only, the present.
Yeah.
I'm only concerned. I got a bit thrown there because the light went
Sorry,
off. Is that
my
normal? Is that a
apologies.
thing that happens?
That's fine. Yeah. So obviously you've shared now, you've gone through to school. There's this, obviously you've been inclusive in yourself, not really a fighter. And I was.
Do you want to hear about the real stuff?
Okay. I've heard about this now, but obviously I'm sure people at home that are probably listening and they're probably going, I want to hear what's being really happening. Like where, how did you get to the point of severely getting onto the drugs? So there must have been.
I can tell you exactly. So I got kicked out of home when I was just after my 16th birthday. Full disclosure, I used to tell the story that my dad woke me up with a suitcase on my 16th birthday. That is not true. There. Yeah. I've said it. It was a couple of weeks after, and we argued. And I didn't even get kicked out. He sort of said, well, if you don't, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah,
all right, so he was like, why don't you just fuck off then? I was like, fine, I will. Yeah. And I did. But then all victim me was like, my dad kicked me out on my 16th birthday. He'd been waiting 18 months to do it. None of that that's all bullshit. So I ended up not living on the streets. I was living there was an old abandoned house. I lived there for a while and I was sofa surfing and I was going here, there and everywhere. I went to a B&B. I stayed with my mum for a little while. And it was kind of about a year of that. My mum was a full-blown drug addict and alcoholic by this point. Yeah. She was living with a guy who flew too close to the sun, man. You can't squeeze him too hard. He's a little tit.
Sorry, Dodge.
Daddy, he squeezed me. So yeah, I think it was actually my 17th birthday and I was at my mum's and I hadn't done anything really drug-wise for quite some time. I'd only ever smoked weed it was blow then, it was hash. And drunk, and that was it. And I hadn't done any of that in quite a few months. And my mum she was selling speed, or looking after speed for a guy who was selling it. Not out of the flat, but she was holding on to it for him, and then he was coming and getting what he needed. And there was ounces of it there, and loads of hash. And somebody handed me a joint and my mum didn't say anything. And then I distinctly remember saying, like, Russell's stoned, and looking over at me like that. And I was just like, well, I am stoned. And then later I went to bed for a couple of hours and then I got back up and they were helping themselves to the speed, my stepdad and my mum. And Chris, my stepdad, was like, I'll give him a bit. And she's like, go on then. Because she's like me, afraid and weak and, not prepared to say no or set boundaries or anything like that. So I don't think she was doing it deliberately to hurt me or anything like that. She just didn't know how to say no because she was in her own disease, in her own addiction, her own madness. So we ended up doing, I think, like 5 days on the speed. Wow. Just talking and smoking endless cigarettes. We've all done FET, but we all know what it's like. Yeah. And then, that was it. After that, Class A, I love it. I don't love Class A's now. I loathe them, but I loved Class A's. People talk about their drug of choice, and I have a drug of choice, but my favourite combination of drugs ever was FET and hash. Wow. There's something about when listening to certain musics, and then I started to get addicted to changing who I was inside. It wasn't changing how I felt inside, it was changing what I was perceiving outside. I like that. Yeah. I like that shifting of reality. Yeah. And so, that was it. And then it was acid on Sundays. That was a Sunday thing. Drop acid and watch the Grand Prix at my mum's next to the fish tank. I can't even imagine doing it now. There's a lot going, when there's food being cooked in the Sunday lunches going on, the Grand Prix on the telly or Highway to Heaven or whatever, and the fish tank, and watching them go back and forth and people are going in and out of the flat. It was twisted, but it was what I did. Yeah. I ended up moving into B&B, which it was a B&B, but it was more for young lads like myself. The lady who ran it, she's dead now, Rip Doris. She was lovely. She hated me. I went completely against the grain. Everybody there was a little sycophant. Yeah. Everybody there was so far up her ass, or cleaning all the time and doing things for her. What can I do for you, Doris? What can I do for her? And I just didn't. I do my own thing, and yeah, she did not like that. But there was a few young lads there, and we all used to sign our gyros over to her on Saturday morning, and we all got housing benefit and that, and we got our little stipend, and there was a breakfast we could have at any time of the day. It was all laid out for us, and we just cooked it ourselves. But there was a lot of car crime, and like lads needed money, and so again through fear, I was getting dragged out doing car crime, and I still can't drive to this day, even though we were nicking them. Yeah, I was the guy who used to fall asleep. Like they used to think it was funny. They'd be like, "Oh, no matter what, he just falls asleep." The reason I was falling asleep in the back of stolen cars is because I couldn't cope with the reality of what I was going through. My body would just shut down. Like it's just easier if I go to sleep. And so we were doing that, and then again, just smoking lots of blow, and then it was pills. Somebody, I know there was a traveller site nearby where you could get anything. So we started getting ease from them. And then when I was 18, I was able to get a job. All I ever wanted to do was work in a bar. Yeah. So that's what I started doing on my 18th birthday, working in just a little pub. And then very soon after that, I ended up working in a nightclub. And that was probably not wise for me. I wasn't working behind the bar there. I was doing glass collecting, and people used to look down on the glass collecting, but I loved it because you were out in the club, just doing, mixing and milling and talking. Yeah, you were right on the front lines, as it were. You meet people, don't you? And then, so, Friday nights was speed night, Saturday nights was pill night. And then, and I was always able to I think I was always able to take or leave it, because there were times when I wasn't off my nut and I wasn't drinking endlessly. And I suppose that all carried it. I stopped working in pubs. I got with a girl in 1998. I was working in a pub at the time. I was running one in Oxford. That's another story entirely, my whole pub career. Yeah. But all I was doing there was smoking a bit of hash. And then I ended up moving back to Cheltenham to be with this girl. And then we got our own place, and slowly but surely friends started coming around, and she liked a bit of weed now and then. And weed started to become the thing as well. So there was a lot more of that going on. And then, she liked a bit of Charlie at the weekends, and so then but then she stopped, and me, I couldn't stop. I'd have my periods without, and I wasn't having to lie to her about my use, but I know that she was not happy with my use, but not really prepared to do anything about it. And we were together about 7 years. She had a year-long affair. My dumbass didn't realise, and then I found out. And then she said it was all over, and then she spent another year still doing the same thing again, but telling me that it was all in my head and I was psychotic and all that, and then I was doing the drugs to change how I felt. Then it became about shifting what was going on inside of me, because I could not cope with these feelings. I didn't know this at the time. Again, this is all looking back. It's all perfect hindsight. So we ended up splitting up, and getting over her was, I thought, the hardest thing I was ever going to have to do. I had 4 years of being alone, living, no girlfriend, no relationship, but desperate to be in one, desperate to prove to myself that I wasn't undateable or horrible. And just that desperation, like, girls smell it, man. They know when you're desperate to be with them. Definitely. And it was just coming across. I know, looking back, it was just sort of oozing out of me. And so again, I was just throwing myself further. Well, if I can't have a girl, I'll have drugs. And that's when, then I was on it. I was living I was working as a nurse for the NHS, or a nursing assistant, nursing auxiliary. So I was quite capable of being sober, clean throughout the day and throughout my shifts. But my time off, I was hitting it hard. There was one Christmas morning in particular, I bombed a gram of MDMA just to, watch this. Yeah. Taking massive amounts was my thing, and it was what people sort of knew me for. But where I was living, I was at this house called 318. Big up 318. Anyone out there, like anyone who's ever been to 318 knows the place. Yeah. And I lived in an attic at the top of it, in the shared house with a few other people. There was always loads of different people moving in and out. But I was the constant, and you knew wherever it was kind of in the middle of town as well. So if you needed someone to go at 3 a.m, there was an entry fee, drugs, obviously. I'd be asleep and I'd have a shift the next day and I'd be like, Rutho! Shit. And I'd get up and I'd throw my keys out the skylight, and then somebody, didn't know who it was, but somebody would be coming through that door any second. And then we'd be on it, and sometimes it could be 3 days. And I've got massive black spots around that place as well. One of my besties, Chris, he said to me, we were talking about the things that we'd done, and not glorifying it or anything, but a few war stories here and there. And he said, I just remember that time that you, me and Carlos were in that room, and you and Carlos were sat on the bed, and I just sat in the same spot in the corner of that room for 3 days solid. I was like, oh shit, I remember that. Like, I had no recollection of it whatsoever, like just blocked from my memory. Eventually that place got so on top because I was dealing weed at this time as well. Only a little bit here and there, just, I don't know, an ounce a day. I was getting my own smoke, and I was making a bit of money to go and get a couple of beers, and I was spending the whole time playing PlayStation and loving life. But deep within, I started to get so paranoid that the police were going to come through the door. I can't handle prison. I'm not that guy. So anything that sort of putting me at risk like that, I was terrified of it. And so I moved out of there. I made a conscious decision, got to move out of here. The landlord had other properties and he quite liked me. So I had a good relationship with him. So he moved me into one of his better properties. And within a month of moving there, I was on my way to Sri Lanka to live. Just that change of being there for so many years, I made the change that I was going to move, and now I know that it's because the universe sort of adjusts itself to meet your needs. And I had a friend whose sister owned properties all around the world. She used to set up telecommunications for the UN, for a company on behalf of the UN. And so whenever she was in these war-torn countries, she'd buy property, and she'd settled in Sri Lanka. And built this amazing house on the land she purchased. And she wanted to spend a year going to all her other properties around the world, just checking on them and stuff. And so she was saying to her sister, who was my friend, who I sold weed to, I really need a guy who's great with dogs, not afraid to be alone, doesn't care about Christmas. I just need somebody to come and stay out of the house for a year. And she was, that's Russell. That is 100% Russell.
I know a guy.
Yeah. So 2 days later, she talked to me about it. A couple of days later, I was meeting her sister, and okay, let's do this. She paid for all my tickets out there and that. And so I was just gifted from the universe this opportunity to not take drugs anymore and not to be that guy just for a little while. It turned out it was a couple of years. But so when you get to Sri Lanka, there's a great big sign on the wall, massive. It's the size of that wall over there. Drugs are punishable by the death penalty. So, okay, there's no drugs in Sri Lanka. That suits me quite well. For the first I was living in paradise. I was on an acre of land right on the beach, with these amazing dogs and street dogs and a nice community of Sri Lankan people. Right out, because there's a war going on as well, but that was all up in the north. It was just quiet, and I could get a little tuk-tuk to go to do my stuff. She was paying me. It was perfect. But it was only ever going to be for a year. So for a year, that was what I did. And then I came back, and for about 3 months, I was lying on the floor because I twisted my back doing work, working as a removal man. I've done removals on and off for years. I've moved pianos, I've moved like slate tabletops, filing cabinets full of paperwork. It was a plastic school chair that threw my back. I just picked it up and
wow.
I was done. I was lying. My friend had a girlfriend move in with him, and because she was a student, she paid up 6 months or something of her property of where she was living before. It was only a little room in student accommodation, but I had nowhere else to go. So she said I could stay there rent free, and so I was just for nearly 3 months. I was in this empty room with just a laptop, lying on the floor. I was making cups of tea off the ground like that. I couldn't put socks on or anything, and then and this is a good example of how we'll talk about framing things and different choices meaning different things. I got a phone call, and it was from somebody in Sri Lanka who'd heard that I was really, really good with dogs. And she'd heard it from a friend of mine, Ewan, who I'd made while I was out there. And he had helped build for this woman an animal rescue charity. Not far from where I was before, but far enough away from it. And my name kept coming up as somebody who was good with dogs and who could run it, and he was leaving. So this lady, Kim, she rang me and said, I really need to meet you. I need to know whether you're the guy, and I'd like you to come out and live in Sri Lanka forever and run my animal sanctuary. Oh, God damn, like, yeah, okay then. And so that was enough to get me off the floor. You know, I put my socks on that day and I started practicing walking. But at the time I think like 10 hours on a plane, how am I going to manage this anyway? I went to London, I met with her. We got on really, really well. She paid all my tickets, visas, all that stuff. Wow. And I was out there just with the clothes on my back, the clothes in my bag. And when I got out there, I met who would become my wife, Joanna. She was volunteering there. She's not a Sri Lankan girl, she's an English girl, but she was out there doing a year of volunteering. She was only, I think she was 21 at the time. I was 31, 32. And yeah, we fell in love. I mean, it's hard not to when you're living in the jungle and there's no one else around and you're the only two people that can talk. And we were kind of like thrown together by circumstance. And yeah, we just got on really, really well. And physically, it was amazing as well. Like it was everything I'd been looking for my whole life. She's gorgeous. And I felt pretty amazing about myself. But I still had this bad back. And I think we'd been together about a month, 6 weeks, something like that. And we were supposed to go out together and get buy the dogs dried food, which meant lumber in big sacks of it. And I was like, look, just take one of the guts. We had workers there as well, so take Cyril with you. Yeah. I'm going to stay here. I can't, my back, I cannot cope with that bouncing up and down in the three-wheeler and then do it. And she was like, well, if you're in back pain, there's some tablets up in my bag. So to give you a little bit of backstory on her, she was born with vertebrae fused in her neck. Oh, wow. So it's kind of like spina bifida. I mean, she's not like that or anything, but she'd suffered her whole life with neck pain, and so she had a golden ticket to whatever painkillers she wanted. Yeah. She's never abused them. She's always been good as gold with them, even to this day. I know, she was like a 1 tablet a month kind of girl. But she said she brought a year's supply with her. So she was like, right, go up to my bag, and there's some tramadol in my bag. Just have one though, because they're really strong. And at this point, I was having a bit to drink in the evenings, a couple of beers. I wasn't smoking weed at all because for nearly 2 years, or 18 months, I'd been off of the weed. I hadn't had chemicals in ages, no crack, no fucking coke, no nothing. And then, I went upstairs and I pulled this pack of tramadol out. I was like, well, I can handle my pain. I can handle my shit. So I'm going to take 3 because I'm in a lot of pain. And in the movies where someone's about to do something and then a version of them from the future appears and they're all wiser and different. They've got longer hair and a samurai sword, whatever. And they're like, don't press that button. Yeah. Don't touch that dial. Don't whatever. That's my moment. I wish a future version of me had put, and if I ever get a time machine, that's where I'm going. Yeah. I'm going to have to tell that guy, do not take those tramadol.
That's mad though. Cause so so to go back a little bit. So you had this madness. Obviously, you was in, is it 318? Yeah. You said where you was at. And go on the 318. And then you've completely been given an opportunity of a lifetime to go out, to be somewhere for 18 months. Yeah, well,
it would have been forever, really, by the end of it.
Forever.
But a year and then a couple of months off and then forever after that.
And for you to be able to get off the drugs, get off the alcohol and stay, sober and clean for that period of time, it's take my hat off to you. And obviously there's a lot of people out there that probably would listen to that and go, okay, well, I'm going to go abroad and I'm probably going to be, try and get clean and sober and stuff. But you've now gotten to another period of your life where you've hurt your back, you've got into a relationship with somebody who was your wife, and then you've had this medication, and now obviously the addiction is going to start rise back up again.
They say things bring you to your knees. Tramadol's what brought me to my knees.
So like with that period then, would you say, would it have helped you if you had some form of support network, or if you kind of knew what you was, like how to stay clean and keep clean? I
didn't realise I was clean at that time, if that makes sense. I never considered myself an addict back then because I could take it or leave it, because, I could smoke crack for 3 days and then put it down for 3 days. Yeah. A lot of it was tied up in money. Like if so the previous girl, when we split up, I ended up with 14 grand. I put all that up my nose in like 3 months not because I was on self-destruct mode or anything like that, but just because look at all my money. I know what I'm going to do with this. I was buying stupid shit and then selling it all at the end. And that routine, that rhythm that we get into of when we've got the money, we buy the stuff and then we use all the money on the drugs, and then we sell all the stuff to pay for more drugs, and then we end up with nothing. And then did that. So with the I'm a firm believer in changing your frame of mind, changing your state. That for me is what has helped keep me clean. We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't a case of like, oh, I'm clean, because I didn't know what clean was, didn't know what addicted was, didn't know what disease was at the time. So it was just what I was experiencing at that moment. And because I didn't have a frame of reference, it didn't. But man, when I started those 3 tramadol, that was the best day ever.
I was going to say, so you're on the prescriptions now.
I'd found my drug. I'd found the drug that I could do all day, every day, be superhuman, get my shit done, be able to talk to people, look people in the eye, answer my phone if it rings, have mind-blowing sex in the evening, sleep for 4 hours, get up early in the morning and do it all again.
Wow.
And yeah, I was hooked from day one. And I'd never had a prescription painkiller in my life up until then. Wow. Never thought that was going to be
and that's just from tramadol. That's prescribed from the chemist.
From prescribed medicine. So yeah, I ended up burning through most of those years' supply. I embezzled a bunch of money from the charity that I was working for, and bought a supreme amount of, because you could buy them. I had a cash and carry card, basically a Costco card, but for medicine, because of the thing that I was doing. So yeah, I brought back a great deal. I don't want to go too much into it. I certainly don't want to glorify it or anything, but because we decided to come back and get married and have children at this point, because it wasn't great for young ladies in Sri Lanka, young English ladies. There's a lot of perverted young men that all they want, they just see a person, a Western person, and they just think it's money. You're either trying to be scammed, or there was a lot of beauty there as well, and it was a lot different. I had a different experience to what Joanna had. So yeah, we made the decision we were going to come back, get married, start a family.
Yeah.
And I brought back a suitcase full of tramadol. Man, if they'd have stopped me at that airport, I would have been executed. They would have taken me straight out the back and shot me in the head. There was a civil war going on. You see bodies underneath tarps all the time over there. They would have taken every penny I had on me, drained every penny off of me that I could have possibly transferred in that moment, and then, and probably her as well. Yeah, but I didn't.
But you didn't get caught.
No.
Wow.
So yeah, that was horrific.
That a universal moment?
I think that was looking back. Yeah, like I'm so pleased that obviously I'm pleased that didn't happen, because otherwise I wouldn't be having this conversation now. No. So we came back, and I just burned through all those. She didn't know that I was doing that, and then building a life with her as well. And we moved back to Cheltenham, my hometown, but there wasn't a lot going on for me there. And I remember saying to her, I kind of didn't really want to be with her either at that point. I was like, I want to be back in Sri Lanka. I miss the heat. I miss the fact that my psoriasis wasn't on fire all day, every day. I missed the food. God, the food was amazing. I missed the dogs. And so I broke up with her. Said, I want to go back there. And ironically, she took an overdose of tramadol that day. Yeah. And so we were in the hospital. I was in the hospital with her, and then said, right, well, we'll stay together, because I don't want you doing anything for, but if we're going to stay together, you need to, because she's anti-drugs, anti-all drugs completely. Yeah. So I was like, if we're going to be together, you've got to let me smoke weed. A little bit of manipulation. Yeah. Right? And she was like, because she was young and she didn't want to break up with me, and because I was a manipulative cunt, she agreed to it. So I was just like just blazing again. I was allowed to blaze. I was allowed to hang out with my mates. And then about a month later, she got pregnant. Yeah. Funny how that works, isn't it? And then and she was like, right, well, if we're going to be together and you're going to have a child and you're going to see your child, no more drugs for you. I was like, okay, yeah, of course, babe, do that. Like, you're going to be the mother of my child and all. But I was not prepared to do that. I was still completely and hopelessly addicted to the tramadol. By this point, I was fucked. And I had to go underground with it. I had to be sneaky about my drug use then. And that was really, really hard, because I've always been, throughout my whole life, I've been open about my drug use to anyone who'll listen, like almost to a fault. People don't want to know, and I'm telling them. And now I've got to take it underground, and that made it 10 times worse, 10 times harder. Like spraying myself, gum, constant gum, eye drops. There were so many giveaways though. Like, I thought I had her fooled for all this time, and I didn't.
No, you do though.
I mean, we've talked about it since. She's like, well, I know that when you used to fall asleep in front of the telly and then wake up going like that, you were high. Oh yeah, okay. Because that was something I've always done. I'd get so deep into my, and then but I'd be listening to whatever I was listening to on there,
Yeah.
and it would start to influence what was going on in my head,
Yeah.
and I'd feel like I was stopping breathing,
Yeah.
and I was about to die, and then I'd wake up sort of slapping myself,
Yeah.
and so that was a giveaway.
Yeah.
Anyway, this fucking routine went on for about 6 years. That was when I was fully addicted to the prescription drugs.
Yeah.
So because I'd started to run out, I figured I needed to do something for myself.
Yeah.
I couldn't just keep stealing hers, and I couldn't go and buy any more. So I started going to the doctor and said, I got bad back. She said, I'll try paracetamol. Okay. A couple of weeks later, go back to the doctor. It's not the paracetamol, I'm really working. So, okay, well, let's try you on paracetamol and ibuprofen. That's not working either. So, okay, try codeine. Went to try codeine. Went back a week later. Said, look, I can't get on with these. They're making me constipated. They're even if I only have one, I'm like that. I don't like them.
Yeah.
Woe is me, doctor. And then eventually
Yeah.
she said, what about tramadol? And I said, okay, let's try tramadol. So I left it, even though I had a boxes and boxes of them, I took these tramadol. And then like 2-3 months later, I went back and said, okay, I've still got a few left, but they really worked. I found I only need to really take one every couple of days or something like that. And she said, okay, well, you can have a repeat prescription then. So that was it. Got my tramadol, got my script. So
That
it
was
was all right then.
manipulation there already.
Yeah,
'Cause
mate,
you
classic.
pre-planned everything
Yeah,
of what you was going to do.
proper manipulation. Didn't know the meaning of the word. Didn't know the word existed until, again, looking back.
Until
Like,
looking
this is
back,
what recovery gives you. It gives you a little insight into what a fucking prick you were, and
But
what
it's
a
amazing,
devious
though.
person.
What you're doing is you're kind of sharing with us and obviously people that are listening at home, these are the things that we don't recognise when we're going through that moment. And I'm sure probably someone's sitting at home going, oh my God, I'm doing that at the moment. And maybe there's somebody that's still stuck in addiction as well, not realising that they are doing similar things. And a lot of people that I've been speaking to that have been stuck in addiction and are in recovery themselves, it's very similar stories, very good at manipulation, very good at lying. We think we're good at lying until we realise that the people we're lying to have clocked us from day dot anyway. But there's so many different similarities in regards to everyone's stories as well, 100%. So with yourself now, this is becoming a progressive thing. Like you said, you're trying to keep up this lie. You're trying to spray yourself down. You're trying to eat as much gum, do your eye drops. But there must have came a point now where it was like a make or break in your relationship and a make and break in your recovery journey. When was it that you kind of hit your rock bottom?
Which one? There have been several. So with the tramadol, that was my monthly prescription wasn't enough at this point. So what I was doing, Joe didn't like tramadol, and she'd been given. She tried different things. She tried patches because she was in a lot of pain by this point.
Yeah.
And the patches they were too strong for her. They were 20 mil patches, and she was just like zonked out. So she took them off. I went into the bin and I took them out and I cut them into. I was putting them on me and I cutting them into strips and dissolving it whilst on tramadol as well.
Yeah.
And then eventually she got onto oxy, and that really worked for her. So she was having maybe 2 or 3 tablets a month, whereas I was having the rest of them. And I'd leave that one box, that was her box, but I was rolling over a prescription every month, and that was stopping me from having to rattle on the tramadol. And there was a period where I didn't have it under control, obviously I was completely out of control, but by control I mean I didn't really have any significant rattle. I was just able to go from one, stave off the rattle with the oxy and not be smashing them too hard, just to keep me tapered. And then when every 4 weeks on the dot, every 28 days I was getting my prescription for the tramadol. But then it started to become every 24 days, and I was having to lie about, we've had a flood in the house, or I've left them somewhere, I've done this, done that. The first, before we get into this, mate, I'm really busting for a wee.
It's fine. Let me stop for a sec.
I had that kind of balance, if you want to call it that, of not being too, not having to go through too much in the way of withdrawals. There were moments where I did have to go through withdrawals. Never pleasant. We'll get to those. I was working in a warehouse, and I was doing like 60 to 100,000 steps a day, depending on what day it was, what the busyness was. I was doing all these drugs, and I was trying to do a bit of exercise as well, trying to get myself looking better. And my legs just blew up with thrombophlebitis. And again, the doctor's like, why have you got this? And Joe was like, why is this? It's because of all the exercise I'm doing and all the walking, but it wasn't. It was the flipping drugs making it happen. Both this one in particular was like that. I had varicose veins just all through both, and big thick ones, big crowd pleasers right up to my groin in both legs. This leg was big as well. So I had an operation to remove them, both legs. And I'd already burned through all my tramadol leading up to that, like 10 days after the initial re-up of the prescription. But I had a plan, so I came out of hospital, I came home, and I rang the doctor and said, I need to get a re-up. And she was like, well, you just had one 10 days ago. Yeah, I know, I left them at the hospital. No, that's okay, we can just ring and get them. So yeah, I've already tried that, and they said they couldn't find them. And then she said, well, this is really serious, we're going to need to start an investigation. Well, fuck.
Yeah.
So they started looking at patterns and things like that on the computer, and then next thing I know, Joe's on the phone to the doctors, and she's like, no, I haven't had an oxy prescription in a year. Wow. Like, I've still got the same box. And they said, no, you've had one every month and then boom, wheels were off.
Yeah.
And everyone seemed to be staring at me and saying, right, explain yourself then. And even then I couldn't admit it. Couldn't admit the truth that I was fucked. I was like, do you know what? It's been getting a little bit on top here. I feel like I might have a little bit of a problem, but it's fine. I'm just going to go. I know I'm good. I'll go cold turkey, sort of thing. I'll be fine. And they're like, okay, great. And so they put on my records: do not prescribe abusing. Do not. No one except me. Okay. I'd flushed what was in my system out, and maybe after a week or something like that. But I'd burst into tears for no reason. At the time, I felt there was a reason. I remember specifically I needed to step over the bed or something just to get the Hoover on the other side of the room, and it seemed so far away. And I was just in floods of tears. And the poor children, like, daddy, 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 because they've only ever known me as fun, running around, bouncing off the walls, like, do anything for them, reading stories at night, and now I've suddenly gone to, like, daddy's sick, just leave me alone for a minute. To my, not eternal shame, because I don't believe in shame anymore, but, yeah, like, the poor little buggers, man, it must have been quite hard.
So obviously you've kind of really explained about, this is medicated stuff that you can get from the chemist, you can get prescribed from the doctors, and it's quite common these sort of stories that you hear as well, that people may be listening at home that they haven't got an addiction with substances such as cocaine or crack or heroin or weed, but they're prescribed some things and they may not think they're an addict through that as well. But you've really explained that you was a full-on addict with prescribed. And even getting caught out with it, obviously, when they've realised, hold on a minute, the pattern, there's something not right here, you're abusing these, you still was in denial then as well.
Complete denial, couldn't. Just frightened of what people would say, frightened that Joe would leave me and take the children, frightened that I was going to be alone, frightened that, just fear, just pure fear-based reactions. And that was in 2016. Right, what we now 2024. Yeah. So I was still completely and hopelessly addicted to substance abuse. But now I didn't have my drug of choice, so I had to move on to other things. Yeah. And so that was coke, pills, alcohol. Mainly my alcohol consumption went through the roof. Yeah. Again, it doesn't mix terribly well with tramadol, with prescription painkiller or oxy or anything like that. So you could have a couple of beers, but getting drunk with it. And weed never mixed with it either, so I was quite happy to leave all that alone. So, but now I couldn't have that. Now all my all the old behaviours of hiding it and going full bore crept to the forefront again. And I was living in a little town, and where everyone knows everybody's business, so trying to keep a secret from that as well. And they all knew, everybody knew. I was the town crackhead by the end of it. By the end of it all. So for that was for about 3 years. I was still doing the same thing. I was able to hold down a job. I was working as a bin man. I enjoyed that job. I was able to get on with it, but my paydays were generally payday was pay off my debts, my personal debts that nobody knows about, and then whatever's left, and then pay. This is the bare minimum we need. I left Joe to do all of that. Like, this is what you need. And then whatever's left would probably just go to more drug tokens. So yeah, it was all cocaine pill. And then my guy died, crashed car, died. That was sad. That was super, super sad. But my first thought was like, who am I going to get coke off now? And one of his friends was at his funeral. He was a dealer. So, isn't that a glorious thing? That maybe that was the universe. I've taken this away from you. It was one door closes, another opens. It's like a fucking messed up way of thinking.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to get away from the funeral because I had a bag. So in 2020, Joe left me. I say left me. I'd lied to her so many times, and because she still had her prescriptions, and I was stealing them throughout all this time. I was stealing her drugs, and like, I'm sorry, I've done it again. Coming up with reasons for it, like I would revamp the whole garden, so that when she found out that I'd had her drugs, I'd be like, oh, it's because I got a bad back from revamping the garden. Just like 4D chess where drugs were concerned. Sometimes she'd be in so much pain, and I knew that her tablets were just paracetamol, because I used a razor blade to take them out of the blister, and I emptied them of the oxy and then crushed up paracetamol, sometimes even sugar if I didn't have any paracetamol to hand, and then I put them back in and sealed the blister. I'll get them for you, babe. So she doesn't see the pack's been doctored, and so there was that going on as well. And then I remember there was, or the best days were the days where I'd be trying to secretly take one out, and I'd fuck up the pack so badly as well. I might as well have them all then. I'm done now. I'm rumbled no matter what, so I might as well just have the lot. Just before she said final check, absolutely, this is it. You've hurt me so many times. I'm never going through this again. I am gonna leave you if you do it ever again, sort of thing. But she was always leaving them out and about as well, just leaving them on the side. And when I said, can you just let me, because if she hid them, I would find them. I get that. I'm amazing at finding things. You've got to be in the person's head, and I became her. And I was like, right, where is she? Did. I know. Bang, they're in the flower jar. But I said, I'll buy you a biometric safe, and just with a thumb scanner on it. So the only person who can get in there is you. And he said, no, I shouldn't have to. I should be able to leave them on the side. Again, I didn't know what addiction was, so I was like, I couldn't really say, yeah, but you can't, because I'm an addict. I'll take the fucking shit. I didn't know about obsession, the desire, compulsion, obsession, compulsion. So yeah, she said if it happens again, it's done, and I ended up, and I've told this story a couple of times. I was looking at that blister pack for like an hour, and there was she'd gone out with the children, and I knew that this would be it. Like I knew she was telling the truth this time. Knew there was no getting away with it. I also knew if I took one, I was taking the whole pack. And and I put it back and I'd go away from it. I'd try and distract myself with some PlayStation or doing other things, and then come back to the pack, staring at it again. Come on! It was almost like I was challenging myself. Don't do it! Don't do it! You've got this. You can beat this. And what I should have done was picked up the phone and said, "Look, I can't stop staring at it." So, and then I justified it as well. I'll just have one. I can get away with one. I'll take one, and then I'll throw the whole, I'm an addict, I'm sorry. So I took one. Within 2 hours, I'd taken the whole blister. Wow. And then left a couple just in case because I'm a man of principles, so I didn't finish the last two. And then it was about 3 days of every time she went out into the kitchen, I'm just tensing up, waiting for the noise, because they were in a jacket pocket on the back of the door. And then it was Christmas Eve, and we were going for dinner, for like drinks and stuff with her family's friends. It was quite a big deal. The kids were going, everyone looked nice, and we're all getting ready to go out. And I just heard, for fuck's sake, from the kitchen. And I knew my marriage was over. Worst Christmas ever. Like trying to be nice to people and just having like when she looked at me, I'd been watching the love die in her eyes a little bit by bit for a long time. But when she came out of that kitchen and looked at me, the love had died in her eyes. It was gone. Like it was all over. So we went to the thing. Christmas Day was at her sister's, and it was like a family tradition. We'd all go to this big farmhouse and have a big Christmas dinner, and I'm trying to sit close to her, and they're just pulling away, and then like just done. Everyone there knew that we were done. It was done. That we were cooked, without it being mentioned or anything like that. I'm not going to say her family turned on me, because they never liked me anyway, and now they hate me. So it's fine. It's a natural progression. It is what it is. And
Yeah.
That was 2020. Tried a couple of, I managed to get 3 months clean.
Yeah.
Managed to get back together. There was a lot of me doing the right thing, and then we ended up sort of going out for a couple of drinks. I didn't drink because I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing drugs at the time, and then we even slept together that night, and everything was wonderful. And I was back on the drugs the next day. Wow. The very next day, because I had my wife back. And then she was like, "No, you fucking clown, we're done."
Yeah.
Like, that's it. This was your chance to prove to me that you've changed. You haven't changed a single bit. And I'm like, "Buh, buh, buh." And then, but we were still living together at the time. We had a lodger who they're now together. He was my best mate, but he needed somewhere to go. So he was living there. Now they're together because she turned to him for help with me, and they ended up bonding. But I couldn't handle that. They were together for some time. And again, doing that, it's all in your head. You're a fucking psycho. And yet, but they were living together by this point. I remember saying, and the next 2 years were me at first thinking, oh great, I can do whatever I want now. And I was so brazen with it. Like, she'd come around with the children and it would stink of weed. This is all during lockdown and after lockdown. So I was on full pay for my job, but shielding because of my psoriasis. I'm on medication that lowers my immune system. So I was one of those 2.2 million told to shield in place. And obviously everyone was frightened. And I was loving it. I was flipping loving it. I just had all this extra money. Didn't have a wife or kids to feed. Just don't do that anymore. I do this. This is me. Yeah. You've done it. You're living. You two are together now. You fucking done this to me. So whatever consequences come your way, that's on you. I can't help the way things have turned out. These are the consequences. These are the consequences for your actions, Joe. Yeah. Like craziness. And so for 2 years, I can't really talk about it in too much of a great depth because I don't remember a lot of it. I know I was living in a flat, a 4-bedroom, 3-story flat on my own. The kids' rooms were like shrines. And I had the heating on in every room, and I was living in one room. I was just on the sofa with a coffee table and a TV in front of me. I've talked about the murder, death, kill wall before. I know with you, I had a projector screen for a while, and the white bit of wall that I'd painted wasn't being used for projector anymore because I had a TV, and I used it for planning my revenges against the world. And I left it all there when I moved out. God knows what the person who came to clean that place up was thinking, because there was some off-key shit. Yeah. The coffee table was covered in permanent marker, all the horrible things I used to say to myself. And why don't you just kill yourself? And I'm snorting lines off of that. Because the reason I had money, I not only had my wages, I'd said to Joe, we had quite a considerable savings, and I was like, if you don't give me my half of the savings right now, I'm going to go and kill myself. And so she did. She gave me a chunk of it, not half of it, but a sizable chunk, and that just all. I was doing quite well with crypto at the time. Crypto was booming then. Yeah. So if you were up all night snorting lines and watching what was going on, you were able to make a bit of money, and so I was making good money. And the crypto market crashed. And so all the money I'd made was going up my nose. I still had that lifestyle, but not the funds to do it, not the constantly sort of revolving door of money coming in. That was up until in September of 2021, I assaulted Joe and was arrested for it. I was off my nut. I was on the phone to a friend of mine he's moved back to South Africa, and I was bigging myself up to Joe, saying I'm going to move out there and go and defend the motherland with him, and then if we die, we die, sort of thing, because white farmers were being killed at the time, and that's what he was. And she just turned up because she couldn't get hold of me, and she thought I'd done something stupid, so she'd let herself in, and she'd sort of confessed about her bloke as well at the time, and I was like, just get the fuck out, and she wouldn't leave. She was a stubborn girl. She was just like, no, fuck off, sort of thing. And I was like, you're leaving. And I didn't beat her or anything, but I put my hands on her and I escorted her to the front door. And then as I did so, she said, I'm bringing so-and-so. And I was just like, no, you ain't. And I smashed her phone. And that's what I was arrested for, common assault based on those two things. Yeah. So I was the reason I got arrested, it wasn't at my house, it was at her house, because I made that decision, right, this is it, I'm killing myself. I am absolutely doing it. I'm hanging myself. I tried a couple of overdoses. I tried an oxy overdose, because at one time I took a certain amount and I was asleep for like 3 days. And then Joe had done some reading into it, and she's like, that was a fatal dose. How you survived that is anybody's guess. So I took more than that this time, and I still didn't die. You know, I was asleep for another 4 days. I woke up covered in all sorts. And I didn't pee properly for 6 months after that. You know, I was constipated for a month. So this time I was like, no, I'm going to hang myself. But before I do, I'm going to walk to Cheltenham and I'm going to hang myself at a specific tree where a friend of mine had hung himself previously, and his initials were on that tree. I was going to put my initials on there and I was going to hang myself. Decision was made. But before I do, I'm going to go and give her a piece of my mind. And so I walked to her house, which is about 8 miles away, which is, I sort of had to walk past it. It was going to be my pilgrimage. I'm going to walk to Cheltenham, which is about 70 miles, and I'm going to do it. And the police were there because she was giving a statement, so they banged me up straight away for that. She didn't press charges, so you know I spent 24 hours in the Nick, and then I came home. I wasn't allowed to see the children, so I had a month of not seeing the children. Then eventually I'd sort of lied and manipulated enough that I was clean enough, even though I wasn't, that it was okay for me to see the children. So it wasn't supervised as such, but Joe brought them to the park. This was about 3 weeks before Christmas. And she sat in her car whilst I just played with the kids for half an hour and just saw them. And it was actually a beautiful experience. And even though I hadn't thought about suicide up until that moment, again, on the way home from seeing the children, I was like, I'm definitely killing myself. I've got enough drugs. I can just take an overdose. I don't have to do anything silly. I can just take a massive overdose. I'll spend the next few days gathering what I need, putting whatever, getting my orders in place. And so I did. I took about 400 tablets. And my only recollection, so what happened, I can remember him being on my lap throughout the night. I thought it was it. I washed everything back with super strength cider and I went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning at the bottom of the stairs with the front door open. And what had happened was I was getting phone calls every other day from a wellness nurse to make sure that I was taking my meds, because I was on antidepressants and stuff, and just to check that I wasn't dead, really. And she'd called me and I'd answered, and the only word she could get out of me was overdose. Apparently, this is from talking to her afterwards. So she sent an ambulance around. She was like, go downstairs, open your front door and wait for the ambulance. So I did. I've got no recollection of any of that. The ambulance, I had to do the walk of shame along the high street of the town I was living in. People, everyone knew. You know, so I spent the day in hospital, and then, the nurse that was looking after me, he was like broke because they'd taken out all the packages and stuff like that. And he was saying, you've taken all this and you've lived. Bro, at some point you've got to start thinking that like maybe you're not supposed to die. Maybe there is something out there watching over you. And it sort of did. I mean, they couldn't get me home that day. There was no taxi or anything like that. So I couldn't get a lift because everyone had turned their back on me. So I had to walk 11 miles home, which took me about 4 hours. I was in a t-shirt and jeans. A few days before, you know, a little while before, a couple of weeks before Christmas, it was freezing cold. I mean, if I ever did want to kill myself, I'll just do that journey again, but take less care because it was really diabolically awful, that journey, all those country roads and A roads and that I had to walk along. And I was sort of in a better place, but not. And then the next day I woke up and the whole cycle of it started again. I'm going to kill myself. And I was stomping around town with no clue what I was doing or where I was going. And a girl that I used to work with bumped into me and she's like, "You all right?" "No, I'm not." And she's like, "Right, here's a £5. Go and get some beer, for fuck's sake. Go home, sit down. I'll be there in a bit." And she came around. We had a joint, and she was the one that put it to me, like, because at the time it wasn't my addiction that was killing me. I felt it was my mental health that was killing me. So she was like, "You need to get 30 seconds. That's all you got to get is the next 30 seconds, and then another 30 seconds, and another 30 seconds. Like whatever you've got to do in those 30 seconds to stop you from doing something stupid, you've got to do that." So I started trying to do that. I think I was past, that was the last time I truly thought about killing myself. Then very soon after that, I was walking, I've talked about this before in my shares. I was walking to the gym because I joined a gym because that was what I needed to do. I needed to get big, show everybody, show the world that that I'm amazing. And I was walking to my gym, and a skip lorry drove past, which is what Joe's new bloke was driving. It wasn't his skip lorry. And then a red Seat drove past, which is what she drove. It wasn't her red Seat. But it was enough to trigger me to such a point that I was on the floor, just howling, just beating the ground. I must look like such a fucking psycho. And then this little voice, from now on when I talk about God, I'm not talking about, the old man that lives in the sky. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the universal consciousness that I firmly know connects us all together. The quantum field. I think it's best known as now. And just that little voice said to me, it might have been my voice, might have been his voice, might have been God's voice, whatever it was just a voice saying, get up, like you don't have to do this anymore. You can come back to me. Because when I was a kid, we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but as I was a child, I grew up in a non-secular, is that the word? When you're not religious at all?
Yeah.
Completely non-religious upbringing. But I was quite a religious little kid. I went to a Church of England school only because it was the closest one to us. And I loved assemblies. I loved the vicar turning up on Wednesday mornings. I loved harvest festivals, and I loved Christmas carols. And I was a choir boy. I used to get 50p every Sunday for going to being a choir boy at a Catholic church. And I always felt like I had a connection to something. Knowing no better, I just assumed it was the Christian God because that was all I knew at the time. But anyway, this voice was just like, you could, and Jo hated all that stuff. She hated meditation, she hated spirituality, she hated the idea of the power of now or anything like that, which I was quite into when I first met her. So she sort of drummed all that at me because she was really good looking and I loved having sex with her and I wanted to be with her. So I was quite happy to put all that stuff to bed. But over the course of time, I just forgot all of it. And so the voice that said, the exact words were, you're not with that bitch anymore. You can come back to me. And it was just enough to get me off the floor. It didn't stop me doing the things I was still doing, but it was just enough to make me start looking at things a little bit differently. This is in January of 2022. So I got home and I didn't really sit down and think about it, but I was like, right, I'm going to start changing my relationship to the way I view things. I'm going to try opening myself up to a bit more of the universe rather than just doing what I've been doing, because what I'm doing is, I can't keep going on like this. I'm not strong enough to kill myself, and it seems like I'm built to take drugs, so I'm just not going to die either. So I'm fucked either way, Still no thought of getting clean, just I need to change what I'm doing. And so I started listening to things on YouTube that I wouldn't normally listen to. My feed was the same 12 songs on a loop, and it had been for 2 years. The same 12 angry, painful songs. You ever do that thing where you listen to a painful song and it hasn't hurt you enough by the point it should have hurt you enough? So you start the song again to make, no, it really needed to hurt me more. And then a song called Waymaker came on. You know the song Waymaker? Yeah. So I'd never, I'm pressing play on that. I don't know what it is. And it's just the most fucking beautiful song you've ever heard. And I was in bits. I was crying my eyes out by the end of it. So I did my little Hillsong phase as well. And I started watching movies I wouldn't normally watch. Another time we'll talk about the film Nitram, which is crazy. But that's not for this. And I was on TikTok a lot at the time as well, just watching, not really posting. I tried to do a bit of like, this is my journey, and like it's so cringe to look back at it now. This guy who's obviously blindo talking about penalty shootouts and shit like that and getting his life together. Actually, I can't wait. I'm going to go back and rewatch him because it's been such a long time. So a TikTok came up for a free male rehab. Do you want a free rehab? I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I do. Because I don't know what your experiences with trying to get into rehab. They're very expensive. And my doctor said, I found you one. It's 17 grand. I don't got 17 grand. If I did have it, it would be going up my nose. So I applied to this free male rehab. You know the rehab I'm talking about. It's the one we both went through. And 6 days later, I was there. Just sold what I could sell, left what I could leave, got him rehomed. And I was on the train, just again, here we go again, bag on my back, everything I own in it. And admittedly, I have to confess, I thought it was going to be like a human trafficking scam when I got there. What's this free rehab? I'm going to turn up there, they're going to put me in a container and send me off to goodness knows where. And but it wasn't like that at all. And the other part of me thought I was going to get locked down for 8 weeks, dried out, and then sent back out into the world. But again, it wasn't like that, was it? It was you're still given full autonomy over yourself. There are certain things you need to do every week. There are key work sessions. There are meetings that you have to go to, mandatory stuff. But by and large, you've got your keys, you've got your cash card. Get out with your zero tolerance towards substances, but get out there. Oh, man, was that what I needed? Like, just to be taken away from the world that I couldn't cope with at that point anymore. As much as it pains me to say it, or should pain me to say it, to be taken away from the children, still have contact with them, but just to not have to worry about that anymore, not have to worry about rent anymore because the rent it's not entirely free. I mean, there was a small charge, but it was barely noticeable. And then NA.
Yeah.
My first meeting was 3 days later. I crawled into the city we live in on my hands and knees, naked in the dark. What was it? Frodo says, I don't remember the taste of bread anymore. I couldn't remember the taste of food. I'd forgotten the face of my father. Whatever you want to call it, I was bereft. And then I went to that first meeting and I heard two guys say the same thing about pissing in bottles because they were too paranoid to leave their room. I was like, whoa, I'd do that. And I thought I would take that shit to the grave. And I shared that night. I wasn't planning to, I just wanted to keep my mouth shut. But I did share. I shared back to those guys. Not cross-sharing, but I was like, look, I did that. I can't believe that people are like openly talking about it. And I went to another meeting the next day, another meeting the next day. And I was fully into the 12-step recovery, the fellowship of NA. For a year, I did 90 and 90, there or thereabouts. I think I did 82 and 90, but I was doing some days, I was doing 3 meetings a day. So I did definitely more than 90 meetings in 90 days, but I think only 1 counts per day. They're talking about 90 concurrent meetings on 90 days. I didn't always do that.
Yeah.
And once I got clean, there were little stages of it. Once I got clean, I started to, I was way too full of myself. 12 days in,
Yeah.
and I'm acting like I've got all the answers. 60 days in, there's a bit more humility wrapped up in it. 6 months in, maybe I've learned a bit what humility actually is.
Yeah.
A year in, it's all about being of service and looking for other and helping newcomers and trying to carry that message.
Yeah.
And then I decided I didn't need NA anymore. It's not quite as brutal as that, but because I had all this time free, I was able to learn a little bit about other things, about things that interested me. Started off with neuroplasticity and the ability, because there was something nagging at me the whole time. I did not want to be beholden to a program for the rest of my life. I see these guys who 10 years clean, they're still going to a meeting every day because it's what keeps them clean. I'm not begrudging them that, I'm not belittling them at all. But when they're like, I couldn't do my morning routine this morning, my head's been loud all day, and then what's the point? If we're at the mercy of this disease for the rest of our life, there has to be another way. So I started looking into what those other ways might be. And for me, just to get here quickly, for me, step 1 is the answer. I'm not saying don't do fellowship. Do the fellowship, right? Do those 12 steps for sure. If that's what works for you, do that shit. Yeah. If what works for you is going to the gym every day, whatever keeps you clean. Yeah. If you want to do faith, do faith. Yeah. For me, it's a combination of all of those things. Yeah. But the keystone behind all of it is acceptance. Acceptance of what has happened, acceptance of what is, acceptance of whatever is to come. I read a book about 14 months in, which it popped up on my radar about a year previously. I was like, I'll get that book one day. It sounds really good. And I didn't think much of it. And then I was buying my children, I now have a good relationship with them. I see them all, I see them quite often anyway. And I was buying them books from W.H. Smith with them. And at the corner of my eye, I caught this title of a book. So I bought it. It's called The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. And I read most of it on the train on the way back. The book talks a lot about your blockages and your energy flow and your Shakti. I love that word. Shakti is our chi, it's our energy flow. Yeah. And how we drop these rocks in it. Some of them are massive boulders, other tiny little pebbles, but our whole stream of energy is filled with these rocks that the energy has to go around. Yeah. And these blockages they come from stuff that happened when we were children, come stuff from that, and it's all removable. The book basically says that we as humans, and looking at it, I would say it's true, looking out into the world and from dealing with people, that we're either running towards something that we think is going to make us okay, or we're running away from something that is going to make us not okay. And we're trying to adjust the outside world to how we think it should be in order for us to be okay. Yeah. And that doesn't work. Like, the world is just what the world is. It's just I keep looking outside. I say this because that's where the world is. Like, it is what it is. Yeah. And we're just passengers. We're participants in reality. And so when we try to change reality, for better or for worse, for whatever reason we're changing it, we can't. Like, it's in us. Those reactions to things are in us. And that the problem with the cause of all problems, certainly all my problems, is my mind. Now that I can look at things like that, I've just got so much more ability to be clean. Like I know I have the internal resources to stay clean and find that new way of living without doing the things that are suggested through through different fellowships or through, I still do parts of it. I'll do an online meeting tonight because Tuesday night is meeting night. It's not the end of the world if I don't make it. I didn't do last week's because of the England game, but it's not like, I couldn't do a meeting and so my head fell off. My head rarely falls off, and if it does, it falls off for 2 seconds. Like I'm on myself so quickly now. I can recognize those patterns. I recognize when it's my mind, my ego taking over, like my mind's not happy with the way things are, and so it's trying to adjust things so it feels better about itself. Whereas me, I am not my mind. You've heard me say it. Loads of people have heard me say it, and people always glaze over when I say it. Like, you are not your mind. You are not your mind. Your mind is just the computer that lives at the top of you. And it's been different. It's had different thoughts. It's done different things throughout your entire life. But have you ever heard me do the mirror analogy?
No.
So can you remember looking in the mirror when you were 6 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you remember looking in the mirror this morning?
No.
Or yesterday then?
Well, yeah.
Last time you looked in the mirror. It's the same you, right?
Yeah.
Right. That same you will look in the mirror in 30 years' time. Your brain changed, your external environment changed, your emotions have changed throughout all those times, but there's that baseline level of consciousness that looked in that mirror. And that's you. That's me. That's the seat of consciousness that I try as much as possible to live in now. So when those things are happening in front of me that I may love or may hate or whatever experience I'm going through, I'm just observing it. I'm just witnessing it. And that includes thoughts. So when my mind's like chuntering away to myself, that fucking bitch, she left me and she went with him. Whoa, stop. That's just my mind. Like, when thinking is something I watch my mind do now, or try to as much as possible. And once I've got that disconnect between the two, it's just so much easier. Staying clean's easy. I love myself now. Not in I love myself. I'm not preening in the mirror, although I do preen in the mirror. I hated myself for so long, loathed myself. Those 2 years of isolation I talked about, 2020 to 2022. Like, no, I doubt anyone's hated themselves as much as I hated me. If I were to follow you around talking to you the way I talked to myself those 2 years, you'd have me locked up and they'd throw away the key. And learning that was another big part of it. Like, I can't keep talking to myself like this. I can't keep saying, I can't keep bashing myself over what I've done in the past. It's done. For 13.8 billion years led me to here. Whatever's happened, I've got no right to argue with it. It's done. It's happened. What matters now is how I react to it in the moment, not what's going to go on in the future. Take care of the present. The future writes itself. So I try and make, as much as possible, a loving, kind, compassionate present moment. Doesn't mean I love like everyone. There's people out there I dislike greatly, but I love them because I have to. I can't love myself unless I love everybody else. To hate somebody is to hate myself. To judge you is to judge myself. You are God, the world, reflected back at me, and so is everybody else. And it's hard. It's not always. I didn't levitate in the room. Like, I don't float around on a cloud of enlightenment, feeling that way all the time. But I know when I'm not, and that's the key. I know when I'm going off the path, and I need to be able to get onto myself. And it's not stop. It used to be that was my word, stop. And I try and take myself in a different direction. I don't do that anymore. Now it's doing this. Okay, fine. It goes away. It goes away so quickly.
It's amazing. You've given us a real good outline of like what meditation is and how that's really supported you and helped you. And as well, obviously anyone that's listening at home, I like how you put, don't beat yourself up about things if you work about groups and other, when you go to meetings and stuff. I go and it really does help me and support me. But I try, and I'm sure people listening at home, try lots of different other things as well. It's really important to do that because I know, and you probably agree, when we're so close-minded as to one thing or only work, it's just, you're not able to grow as much. And I wanted to grow in lots of different areas. I want to, you know, I want people to know that there's lots of different avenues you can go down, and if you kind of like involve every single one of them, what you've learned from every one, I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Really.
But they all come from the same source. They
Yeah.
all come from the same quantum field. And if you strip all of it back, religion, the gym, meditation, the spirituality, but I don't like to call it spirituality. I'm just learning to know myself. That's basically the way
Yeah.
I describe it. Or 12-step fellowship. If you strip it all back to its core, it's acceptance.
Yeah.
It's learn to accept. It doesn't mean you have to accept something bad and you can't change it. It doesn't mean I accept it, therefore it can't change. It just means get used to saying it is what it is. I know it's a frustrating thing for people to hear. Some people you say it is. I fucking hate that phrase. Yeah, so do I sometimes, because it's not always easy to accept that it is what it is. And sometimes I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
I just know it is what it is. Like, man, the most important thing that I've learned is the serenity prayer.
Yeah.
Like, God, like, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I've said it dozens and dozens of times over the course of my recovery, my early recovery. I don't need to say it to myself anymore. I had trouble bringing it to mind then, but I live it. Like, it's in me. It's part of my DNA.
Yeah.
Man, I don't want to say it's all in your head, not in the same way that, it's all in your head. I don't mean it like that. What I mean is, like, our problems, our addictions, it's all mind-made stuff. Like, that's how two people can have the exact same experience. One of them becomes an addict, one of them doesn't. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with genetics or anything like that. It's their brain, it's their mind, it's how whether that person is allowing their mind to make the decisions for them. I don't allow my mind to make decisions for me anymore. Now I allow my mind its moment, and it's almost like talking to a child at times. It's like, thank you very much. I hear what you're saying, appreciate it. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. I'll take it from here. Yeah. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I'm decades away from reaching the pinnacle. Decades. I thought there's a bit of me that believes we can snap our fingers and be done with it and get over our shit. And to a certain extent it is. Like, I was able to get over my original addictions by being given a ticket to Sri Lanka. Didn't realise it at the time, but my frame had changed. My frame of reference had changed. So therefore, I've got a friend and we talk quite often, and her husband died, and she's really struggling around that. And not just that, but just everything else is tying into it. And I said, if I could, she said, I'll never get my brain straight. I'll never get my mind right. I said, but if I could tell you, I'll bring your husband back from the dead, and all you've got to do to keep him alive is keep your brain right, you'd keep your brain right. Like, if you had a child that died and you're now addicted to heroin and living on the streets, and I said, look, I can bring your child back from the dead, and you never, ever, all you've got to do to keep that child alive is stay off the drugs. You'd stay off the drugs. You'd never pick up again. It's in us. It's in there. You just got to find it. My heart breaks for people who keep relapsing. But at the same time, I want to, what the fuck is wrong with you? Stop relapsing. Like, have you not suffered enough? I've suffered enough. That's my frame. That's my change of frame of reference. I have had enough pain. I've hated myself enough. I can't go back to hating myself. I couldn't if I wanted to. I know if I pick up drugs, I do, because the NA has given me that. It's given me that knowledge around addiction and like picking up where you leave off. I know I can never successfully use drugs again. But there's no, why can't I? I bet I could. There's none of that. I'm done with it. I know we're not supposed to say I'm never going to relapse again, so I'm not going to say anything as blasé as that. I'm never relapsing again. I'm never, because I just don't know what's around the corner. Yeah. But another phrase I really like is, it's not how far away you are from your last drug that matters, it's how close you are to your next drug. I'm so fucking far away from my next drug. Yeah. So much shit has got to happen. And so many warning signs and red flags. And if I do pick up again, that's on me. Yeah. Like, I can't go back to the room. So it's because I'm a cunt. It's because I'm a lying addict who lied to himself all this time. Yeah. And who never truly believed the things he was saying, even though I believe what I'm saying. There's no excuse for me to pick up, none whatsoever. If my children, God forbid, die, I'm not going to pick up. I'll be the one at the funeral whilst everyone else is falling apart. That anyone who needs strength, you come see me at that funeral.
Yeah.
Because I'll be stood stalwart. And I bet people roll in their eyes. You go ahead, you roll your eyes. I don't care. I don't, like, whether you believe me or not, it doesn't matter. I believe me. And another thing for anyone who is, we have to learn to love ourselves. It's not easy to start loving yourself. It was a long journey for me, a long time of coming to terms with the things I did. But if you can love yourself, it doesn't really matter what else is going on in the world. Like, I love me. I like me. Your like is a bonus. I'll take it. But if somehow I've triggered you or something, I've said something today that's annoyed you, and you and I never speak again, I'm cool with it, man. Like, I'm not going to be chasing you on the phone. What did I say that's wrong? Please, you know, if you want to talk to me about it, say, look, and if you came back to me and said, you said this, this, and this, and you really pissed me off about that, that is a you problem. Like, because it's your problem.
Yeah.
It's no matter what, you know, I told you this would happen. I've got like 30 different things in my head that I just spat, and I just don't know which direction to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's all on us as addicts. We're alone. We were born alone. We're going to die alone. This journey is ours alone. Now we can have fellowship and we can have people and be of service, but at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it's just you and your fucking mind. And say it to the guys all the time at our rehab when we do the meetings and that. Because I'm not with the rehab anymore. Yeah. I'm in my own place, but I still try and stay as connected as possible to it. You ain't going to get recovery sitting in your room tossing it off all day. You're not going to get recovery distracting yourself with PlayStation. You're not going to. It'll keep you clean. Yeah. It can keep you clean. You're not going to get recovery in the gym. You're not going to get recovery distracting yourself with the fellowship or doing your. You can, but the easiest, quickest, most foolproof way that I can think of getting recovery is learning to sit on the sofa with no phone.
Sitting with yourself.
Sit with yourself, man. Sit in the fire. I love it now. Yeah. I wanted to talk about the long night of the soul because I've had a couple. I had one in a tent where I was, and I thought that was the hardest night of my life. It wasn't. The hardest thing I ever had to do in recovery was sit with myself for a couple of days without distracting and just letting all those feelings and all that stuff with my ex and all the pain and trauma that I'd caused myself and caused others, and just letting it happen and just bringing my attention back to it. Don't distract. Don't start thinking about something else. You're not going to go and jerk off. You're not going to smoke a cigarette. You're not going to go make a coffee or go and talk to somebody else about it or share openly and honestly. You're going to sit on this sofa and you're going to let your mind burn itself out. And that's what I had to do. And it took 2 days. And I came out of it a different person. Like that, I was born that day, those 2 days. I could talk for a month about that long night of the soul. It was...
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like, Guy, if you take one thing away from all of this, put your phone down, sit on the sofa, and allow your thoughts to be. They're allowed to be. Yeah. No matter what it is, no matter how off key, even if it's a murder, death, kill war. That maybe that was the wrong way of going about it, but at least it was getting out there. There's no judgment. There's no point in you sitting in that seat of consciousness like this, observing the world, your mind, external thoughts, feelings. It's all just, it's atoms and quarks and leptons, and it's everything since the Big Bang is just out there, manifest in the quantum field. Yeah. And we're just observers, we're just passengers. Yeah. So allow it to be. Enjoy the present moment for what it is. We're so lucky. Yeah. We're so flipping fortunate just to be alive. The odds on us existing, the sheer level of coincidences, if you want to call them that had to line up for us to be born in the first place. We're on a planet, a ball of dirt spinning through space, as far as we know, completely alone in the entire universe, spinning at 67,000 miles an hour. We're traveling through space. That's how fast our galaxy's moving. Yeah. You know, on a planet that's 4.8 billion years old, we've got a lifespan of 80 years. And not only are we born, we're born into a reality that has touch and dogs and smells and colour and shape and emotion, whether it be love or hate, whatever. We're in it. So why would we be judging it? Like that, you're not getting anything from that. It's just what a waste of this amazing gift we've been given.
Yeah.
It's such a waste to not be happy with it, no matter what is. You're never going to... Have you ever been completely happy? I've never been, until recent, and even now I'm not completely happy, but there's always something else. Like everything you get becomes something you have, and then it's what's next, what's fucking next, and we're always chasing something. A bird, a new PlayStation game, a holiday, a job, money. I'm not interested in money. Got no interest in it whatsoever. All this could be taken away from me tomorrow. I could wake up tomorrow, him dead. It will not change who I am inside, because this is my experience. This is what's laid out in front of me. And it's not my job to change it. It's not my job to judge it. It is my job to accept it and to appreciate it for what it is. And the more you do that, the more I can detach myself. Doesn't mean I'm not involved, doesn't mean I can't influence things, but it just means, and the more I can do that, the more that lower self, that shitty little voice that lives inside us, the more I can open up to the world in that manner. Eventually, the lower self will just be like, oh, that's much better. And it will retreat into me rather than me trying to retreat into it and trying to make things different to make them better.
That's awesome. You've really gone on a deep one there and explaining everything. That's brilliant. I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing, of your journey. Thank you for sharing, in depth of, with your recovery journey and how you're getting through it and being able to put your spin on it as well. Because I'm sure there's people at home that will be able to definitely take some stuff on board of what you've been sharing. But we'll leave it there for today. Guys,
Sam,
thank you so much.
Got things to do anyway, both of us.
Everyone that's been listening, thank you
that?
so much again for listening to another great episode today. Again, just to remind you all, is there anything that you want to know more about with any form of like meditation or anything like that, then I will definitely point you in the right direction with Russell. But yeah, once again, guys, thank you so much for your support, and everyone take care.